Hello and welcome everyone to our 20th FAIRWork webinar. And today our colleague from RWTH, Johanna Wertz, will introduce FAIRWork's approach to transparency and especially from the perspective of the end users. So without further ado, Johanna, the stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. And thanks everybody for being here, for listening. I'm looking forward to presenting what we have been doing in FAIRWork from the end user's perspective. So maybe just a second. Now it's working. I am a short introduction to myself. I'm from the Chair of Intelligence and Quality Sensing. That's a mechanical engineering chair at the RWTH Aachen University. So at the very west of Germany, you will find Aachen, close to the border to Belgium and Netherlands. And there you also find the WZL with the Chair of Intelligence and Quality Sensing. The professor of the chair is Robert Schmidt. And what we're doing at the chair is has this triangle, or finds itself at this triangle between sustainable quality and measuring this quality and then turning it into robotic automation, so sensing and robotics. And where I would put myself in the corner is the area of information management, more specifically socio-technical systems. So I'm a psychologist at a mechanical engineering institute, and so I'm looking at this topic of socio-technical interaction and how to improve, especially the technical side, so that people can work with it better. And also FAIRWork, the project, finds itself or can be put here in this corner between data intelligence, so developing automation and AI services, and then applying it to humans with this socio-technical approach. So when in our daily lives as humans, we want to make decisions, and in the best case, it's a correct decision. So we want to use facts. If I'm asking myself, what do I want to wear today? Maybe I look at the fact that it has 10 degrees outside. Degree in this Celsius degrees in this context would be something like metadata. So I'm using this kind of data to evaluate what is the information I get out of 10 Celsius degrees. The information is it is rather cold, so I should maybe wear a scarf. So this is how I come to the conclusion to maybe wear a scarf today. And what we're doing in the context of FAIRWork or in general in industry is what we're trying to do, let's say that way, is to automate this kind of decision pipeline. So we're normally using data, we're collecting data, and then turning this data into a model. So we generate models use this, and then out of this model comes some kind of decision that, for example, says we have to shut down this machine now because it's running too hot. We're staying at the level of temperature, or we have to we have a decision, something like which workers will work at my production line today at what times, where do I produce which products. So something like production planning, something that we're doing in the FAIRWork in one of our use cases. So this is the kind of decision that we're automating. And from my latest example, so this production line planning, it doesn't stop here actually. So what we're adding is a human action in the end. So we're actually adding the point that an operator at a production line says, okay, the system now tells me to put worker A and B at this production line and then to produce this and this other product. Do I really do that? How do I now as an operator decide to really put the people there? So do I trust the outcome of the automated decision? Will I actually accept it and then eventually use it, or in which way will I use it? And this is then now the focus that my colleague Johannes and I are putting in FAIRWork on this question. So how do we actually add this human action to this automated decision that is coming out of an AI system in the end? And the aim is of course to increase decision quality, to increase the decision quality of the human at the very end, to increase this action in quality. And what for a very long time, if we look at literature and research, what has been answered a lot is the question of how do we increase decision quality? Well, we need more data. Because with more data, we get more powerful machine learning, and then we get better decisions. But here comes the psychological perspective. What we see if we look at human action based on data and machine learning AI outcomes is there is a tension between the fear and adoption of AI. So humans are not just adopting the results of AI systems, but there is a lot more going on. So the question, what does it need to increase decision quality? It very often is between these two, or finds itself between these two extremes. So on the one hand, we have the lack of trust, where people say, no, I don't trust the system at all. This is something we, for example, find when we look at autonomous driving. There is a high lack of trust towards autonomous driving systems, which certainly also comes back to the fact on how autonomous driving is communicated in the public, but there is a high lack. On the other hand, we find examples of ChatGPT here, where we see people are blindly trusting the system and just using it without any further context or thinking. So we have this other extreme of overtrust. But where we actually want to be is somewhere in the middle, right? We want to have this optimal informed usage so that users are thinking about their decision, are using a system outcome in a sensual way. And this is why we have to look at effects like algorithm aversion, algorithm appreciation. What does users drive towards one or the other extreme, and how do we kind of bring them to the middle, to an informed usage, to a good way of trusting a system. And one way of an optimal, or one answer to the question of how can users be optimally informed, is certainly transparency in artificial intelligence. So we need to explain the system, and we need to give context to the usage of the system. Here again, on the left-hand side, we see that explainability has very long been looked at from an only technical perspective. So transparency in artificial intelligence was developed in a way that an AI expert and a developer of an AI system can understand the system and can improve the system, which is certainly important. But again, we also need the other perspective. So the end users, domain experts, managers, workers of production lines, like in FAIRWork, need to understand the system so that they are able to trust it and come to an informed decision. And the question on the left side would be, what is actually technically possible? How can I make black box AI systems, very complex AI systems, or just very complex machine learning processes? How can I make them technically transparent? And the question on the other hand would be, what do users need for informed decisions? So not what is possible, but what do they actually need? From the question, what is technically possible, I'm not the expert here, but what normally happens is that we have an XAI system. XAI stands for explainable AI. We have an XAI system that is added to this decision pipeline. So we add these systems that explain how do we turn data into information, into a decision. We add models on the side here to make these processes not understandable, but make them explainable. But as I have already mentioned, this is probably not the way that end users, probably not the way end users need the information to be, but they have a very different perspective. Very often they are lay AI users. They are not technical experts. They are very probably domain experts in what they are working, for example, production planning, but they are not the experts of the systems themselves. So what we did in FAIRWork is we asked we made focus group, 3 focus groups with 26 participants, and we presented them different ways of different AI apps, and then asked them for, okay, what do you actually want to know about this app before you use it? And what they said is, here's some examples, and these are not direct citations, but these are just very shortened examples of what they basically said. So they wanted to say they want to know who developed the system. They want to know which institution is behind the system. They want to be the final deciders. They do not want to give up control of the system. They want to know about data security, if applicable, so if that plays a role, and who is making money with it. Who is responsible if the system makes an error? Is it my mistake, or is it somebody else's mistake? Or will somebody be responsible from the developers of the system? And they want to see the results in some specific ways, depending on the type of system. So taken together, what they want to know is a very non-technical transparency in the end. So this, what we understand of XAI on the left-hand side, is not what end users want to know or what helps them actually making a good decision. Because for them to know how is data transformed into information does not add any value on, can I trust this result? So, but what helps them in this decision, can I trust the result, is something like background information. So who is the developer? Whom am I trusting? And also something like how high is the quality of the system? So something like account numbers that help me to evaluate the percentage of correct answers of the system, for example. And what we also see is that the way of how the transparency has to be built is very user, system, and task dependent. So it depends on the user's expertise in AI. It depends on the user's previous experience with AI systems. Here comes in the system. So it also depends on what kind of systems do exist already, which with somebody has interacted before. And it depends on what kind of task am I automating here. So is it a very highly sensitive task? Does privacy play a role? How bad is it if a mistake happens? Is it immediately costing lives? Then of course I have a very different expectation of a system. Or is it just a bad production plan for this 1 hour? So of course this plays a huge role. And well, yeah, taking these three core results together, we have to do when we look at automating a decision, and then also when we need humans working with these decisions and using these systems, is that we have to take the human into account when we design the process and the way of automation, and we have to take into account what we know about what we've just learned and what we know about how humans interact, and we have to take the human knowledge into the system. So in building the system in a way that it is adapting to the human based on what the humans want. And let me put one step up, just mention one step further. The result, or the example, the use case of production planning actually already has this has inherently this next step, which is that when I'm planning a production, I have to inform one further stakeholder actually. So I do not only inform the person who is making the final decision, an operator, but I also have workers who have to accept this decision. So when I'm looking at how to include the human and how to build a system, I should not only look at the operator, but also go one step further and think about, okay, and how do I now inform the workers that are affected by the system, but not directly interacting it? This is actually something that we have not looked in FAIRWork that much, but it's rather an outlook on what should be done in next steps, which has not this final step. The third parties, as I call them, they have not been considered that much in automating and transparency, human interaction research actually in the end, but should be looked at in future research certainly. So what my key messages for today would be, and what I want you to learn from today's webinar, is that we have to grant understanding to users. So we have to understand that good technical solutions do not automatically mean that that this is a good decision for humans. So we have to distinguish between a technical development and then a development for the users. And for that, we have to consider that humans are not machines. They are not logical. Sometimes they are logical thinkers, but they have taken into account very many more information. So X and Y may be Z, but not always, but we have to explain it in a way that they understand that it might be Z. What I have mentioned today is that transparency is not automatically understandability. We have to distinguish between these two concepts. And also understandability does not automatically mean that users trust or use a system, but rather that they now are able to make their own decisions. And then I have to explain and make this understandability in a way that they can trust and use a system. Also here, trust and usage is not the same. I might trust a system, but I still might not use it because some organizational well, how an organization is built, for example, hinders me from using it. So there are also here again other factors coming into account. So human-centered system design is key for evolving or for enabling a technically well-developed system to also be used. And this human-centered system design that has already been in place quite some time has to include this human-centered type of transparency. So transparency has to find a way into human-centered system design. So to make people able to make trustful and autonomous decisions based on the facts that we give them with our with our AI systems. With that, I thank you very much for your attention. And if you've got any further questions, don't hesitate to ask them now, contact me later, or contact my colleague Johannes Zisk, of course, who's also working on this. Thanks.
So, thank you very much, Johanna. It's a very interesting and good presentation. So are there any questions from the colleagues, from the participants yet? Or do you need time to think and come with the questions later directly? So then thank you very much for joining. Our next webinar will be at the end of March, where we give an introduction, an overall overview of our research in FAIRWork. And then hopefully you have a nice day and see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.